You are now tuned into the Jist Podcast.
Welcome to the Jist Podcast. I'm Edie, one half of the Jist, and to my left is my co-host Namdi.
What up?
On today's episode of the Jist, we have two phenomenal individuals in studio, Ofo and Felix, CEO and COO respectively of a company called Who's Your Landlord. If you haven't heard of it, you will soon. Who's Your Landlord is positioned to disrupt the housing community forever.
Who's Your Landlord does this by allowing this community to take ownership of their living situation, by providing information to guide their decision-making process. Pretty much think of it like Yelp for the everyday renter.
For sure. So in this episode, we discuss how Felix and Ofo were able to take this concept from a college dorm room to the corporate boardroom. We also discuss challenges and opportunities for 2018 as a young and up-and-coming business. And lastly, we talk about how you, the listener, can position yourself to own a piece of Who's Your Landlord, a company that is on its way to the top and is definitely worth over a couple M's.
Couple B's, boy.
Big bowl of bread.
Big bowl of bread. Yeah, man. So we hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. It's the Jist Podcast. So how would you describe yourself?
Got you. Man, we're good or this is?
Oh, no, yeah.
We're good. Oh, we're good. We live. All right.
We're good now.
We're running. All right. Good stuff, man. How would I describe myself? It's funny. I'm looking at the sticker you have on your laptop here. On Edia's laptop, it says greatness is a process. I operate in a space where I feel like greatness is something that you have to wake up wanting every day. I think if you think that way, you tend to live a great life just because every day you look at yourself as being great. A little bit about my background. I always start with my parents. My dad was born in Nigeria, moved here when he was 18 years old, grew up during the Biafran War. And then my mom was born in Barbados, lived there till she was about 11 years old, moved to East Flatbush, New York, when she was 11 years. So I've had a lot of family in New York for a while, but my parents, their own growth trajectory, their own struggles, I think led a lot to my own kind of upbringing. So started out born in Paterson, New Jersey, lived there for a few years, ended up moving to like Buffalo, New York, Baltimore, Maryland, before landing in Ellicott City. Ellicott City is like a suburb of Baltimore. But I was with my parents from when we had a studio in Paterson where you'd split the bedroom from the kitchen with a bed sheet to the point where they have their own house in Maryland, and they've lived there now the last like 17 years. So watching that growth, seeing how much they give back to their own families at home, I think that's always been instilled in me. So from a social standpoint, I've always wanted to achieve greatness in that regard. But in terms of my own career trajectory and everything, I ended up going to Temple University, studying entrepreneurship, management, and information systems. Got involved in acting and modeling early, actually. So I did some work. Did some work with Nike, ESPN a couple times. I was on the Today Show a bunch of times. And at the same time, actually, so I've known this guy, Felix, here for 17 years now. I've been best friends.
Oh, wow.
And so we went from playing sports together. We played in basketball leagues, played football. We started our own like kind of football league together. Or even just watching him play baseball and stuff, going to his games and stuff like that when we were young. We've always been in team-oriented spaces together. So when we had concepts for building businesses in college, we were working together already. We had started a business back in 2012 called Untapped, which was a brand development firm, and we worked with other businesses and artists on getting their message out to the right people. Sure. And then Who's Your Landlord was next up, and we started that, and I guess we're building that history now. I can't say the rest is history yet, but we're building that part.
Yeah. So Untapped, kind of want to touch base about that. It seems like a lot of entrepreneurs, that's something that's common. Like they have a lot of different projects they want to work on, a lot of different interests, that rise, and go through the different phases of that, building it out. Maybe something doesn't work, but you learn something in that process to be able to roll over to the next entrepreneurial venture. Right. So like, what was that? What was the concept? Can you like go further into it?
Yeah.
And then and then why did it die down? If it even died down, I don't know. I'm just assuming. And then also just talk about what you learned from that were able to help yourself and Felix with Who's Your Landlord to date.
Yeah, definitely. So Untapped, again, it was a brand development firm. We work with artists and businesses on really crafting their message, getting their story right, getting their message right, getting their brand right, so that when they went in front of that audience, they could better attract them and better make them into stickier clients, or an audience, or whatever the case was. But it was funny when this is 2012. We were working on it a lot. A lot of it came out, like, you'd have like graphic designers and stuff. You'd need video people, all that kind of stuff. We were working on a project with my brother's company, and the comedian was Clint Coley, and Clint's been blowing up ever since, which is awesome. But I remember we had created a graphic for that. He was performing at the Irvine Auditorium at Penn. Yeah. And so we had created the graphic for it and everything. And we knew internally the graphic was booty. Like, it wasn't good. And so we kept going back to our designer. Like, and mind you, we didn't have a team. It was just Felix and I, and then a bunch of just adjunct college students. So we're going back to this designer who also happened to double as our DJ for our parties. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, right. And no matter how much I go back to him and say, hey, can you tweak this? He'd be like, hey, I got class, or I got this, I got that. And wasn't tweaking it well enough. So to the point where 2 days before they were about to go live, the whole performance for Netflix was a Netflix special. We got pulled. Like, the graphic got pulled. And I was just like, it was eye-opening, just because, like, we realized it was hard to rely on college students from that regard, right? Because everybody's a hustler, everybody's a go-getter. But it's like, but are they really getting things done? Yeah, you know what I mean? And so the company actually didn't die down. We were working on certain stuff, but the idea for Who's Your Landlord hatched in the meantime between us, like, expanding Untapped. And it was like, okay, well, Untapped was the company, Who's Your Landlord was an idea, so we built it under Untapped. And so for a while, the first about year and a half,
Who's Your Landlord under Untapped?
Yeah, it was a kind of subsidiary, or really a project of Untapped Incorporated. Sure. And so it went from that to being like, wait, I think Who's Your Landlord has some legs here, and we can explore that deeper. And it maybe makes more sense to get it right with this business, and then we can go back and do whatever we want with Untapped at the end of the day. Because it was more of a general business. And so we started working on Who's Your Landlord, and then about a year in, made it its own company, and been building ever since.
So I have a question. So from an entrepreneurial standpoint, how important do you think it is to kind of just focus all your attention on one project versus trying to go ahead and tackle two projects at the same time? Do you think it's are you still working on Untapped simultaneously, or is that completely on the back burner for now?
There's a couple ways to answer that, right? A good friend of mine is the CEO of one company and a co-founder of another, and that other company just raised some capital, so they're going to be moving too. Jack Dorsey, with Twitter, he runs two companies. You know what I mean, Square and Twitter. So there's abilities to run multiple companies. I don't think that you have to be just so myopic and focused on just one. But I think in the early years, it's really hard to run many things successfully. So Untapped for us has been in the back burner because we've looked at it as transforming from a brand development firm to really being okay, one thing we've noticed in our journey with Who's Your Landlord so far is how difficult it is for African Americans, people of color in general, to raise capital. It's really difficult. It's less than 1% of us each year raising venture capital dollars. So we were okay, if we know that's a problem, and we know Untapped had kind of a general globalist view as a company, well, maybe the future for Untapped is we use that as a means to invest in other companies once we make it there. Right. So you keep it, you make sure you pay your $300 fee every year to keep it incorporated, and you rock and roll. And so that's kind of how we look at it right now. But I think we've been at this game long enough where you understand your time very well. You know how to understand how to divvy it up proportionately. And so I think there's definitely opportunity in other ventures as well, as long as you don't lose the focus of what you need to do. And I don't think that's ever a problem.
Yeah, there was a couple of things there. I'm over here taking notes. Just the branding component of Untapped. Can you kind of speak to how that helped so far with Who's Your Landlord? Obviously, I'd assume that there were probably principles or guidelines or something that you were using with your clients with Untapped that you were able to kind of roll over to the Who's Your Landlord side, and has made this company so far such a strong brand. I think that's definitely helped with you guys with all these media opportunities and just folks tackling and tacking on to this concept of Who's Your Landlords. Can you just speak to that briefly?
Yeah, definitely. It undoubtedly helps. It helped in a couple ways. It helped us learn how to appropriately delegate work and how to work with other folks. But I think it also helped us learn there's a standard. Getting your work pulled from something that was going to be major, it sucks. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing to go back to your team and tell them that after you're spending every week. I think we were going to my brother's house twice a week with my fellow college students, having these long meetings, coming back, doing the work, going back, and then after all that over months, it just gets nothing happens, right? So if anything, it just sharpens your focus early on. And we always knew that, the most important, when you think about even the concept, without getting too deep, America itself is a brand, right? The idea of the land of opportunity, home of the brave, right? All that stuff, like, other countries look at that and they want to be part of that brand. They've branded themselves right. We're not infallible. We don't not have issues as a country, but we brand ourselves really well where it looks like, hey, well, why not deal with these issues versus your issues, right? Sure. So, that's a good point. Branding is everything. And, we've been approached by acquisition off the strength of our brand alone, not even taking a dive into the numbers and stuff. So I think from a branding perspective, from what you're trying to get across perspective, connecting with people, we learned that during Untapped. I think it's something we've always kind of naturally been in tune with, but it was interesting learning that and then being able to quickly apply it to Who's Your Landlord.
I actually have a question. So prior to you showing up, Edie had something that he wanted to go ahead and ask in terms of threats that you may get from landlords and things of that nature.
That's supposed to be for later. That's for later on in the discussion.
But the reason why I brought it up right now is because you mentioned people wanting to go ahead and acquire Who's Your Landlord. Sure. So have you ever come across someone who may be interested in acquiring it, or is there a fear that someone may be like a realty company just being interested in acquiring it just to stifle it, exactly, and just shut it down?
That's not a fear. I think it's a good problem. You know what I mean? I think you can leverage that. You leverage it by the new valuation they give it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think for what we're looking to do, that's not what we want to do. You know what I mean? Like if a big property management company came to us and said, "Hey, look, I'll pay you guys, here $20 million, just go away forever." Like, nah. Like we know that if they're doing that already, we know where we're going is the right path. You know what I'm saying? And so in the beginning, I guess kind of get into the question you're going to ask a little bit later was, we probably been threatened to be sued at least 12 times by landlords. You know what I'm saying? None of it's ever sufficed. God willing, it keeps that way. But there's things that are in place, right? The Communications Decency Act. There's already sites like TripAdvisor, Yelp, Facebook has reviews, Google has reviews, Amazon. So it's a lot of it was sticker shock. It was shock like, wait, this has never been in our industry before. Exactly. Real estate is the seediest industry in America, and it's unearthing all those secrets. And so that made people uncomfortable. And in any industry, transparency, which leads to accountability, is always better. Mm-hmm. And so they're not cognizant of that. We've spoken at Landlords Association many a times, and what you will find is all that ends up happening is the landlord that sucks is the one that's yelling the whole time, and the good ones are kind of
hey, I want to leverage that platform because it will show how great.
Exactly.
All right, so kind of the backtrack because we didn't do this because we know what the hell it is. Right. You're listening right on. So can you backtrack and first of all just tell us, give us your elevator pitch. I know you had it.
Always ready, man.
You had it on MSNBC and you had it at the 4040 a couple years ago. Yeah. When I met you. So if you can just first of all give us that pitch about what Who's Your Landlord is, its objective. Right. Who it serves, and then also if both you guys can just touch on your the inspiration. Why, what drew you to pivot from a situation in Untapped, branding for the most part, and pivot to housing? What is the personal experience like? Can you just touch on that?
Definitely. So to start, Who's Your Landlord is a web platform that's built to empower and to inform the rental community. We do that through providing landlord reviews, community-driven content, and also access to quality listings. Been doing this for a few years now, have over 320,000 users on the site, 70% of which are millennials. Average age of our users 25, with half being college students, half being young professionals. How we came up with the concept for it. So my senior year at Temple University, I was a VP of the student body. In my position, it dealt with everything happening really external to campus, right? So one of the things that dealt with was housing. And in North Philadelphia, for folks that don't know, it's the same way Brooklyn looks now. It's been rapidly undergoing gentrification. A lot of it because of the schools that are there, Temple included. And And so what's funny is not only is the community, the fabric of the main community there affected, but also the students were affected too, because you'd have landlords, kind of overnight landlords, create these properties or renovate them, really shabbily done. And then things would break or things just didn't work from the beginning and they didn't care. They were renting it out per room to students and making a lot of money. And so you had students complaining like, yo, like, how do you even solve this? You know, where do we begin? So the first premise was, you know, the idea I came up with was, what if you could review landlords? That way, you know what to expect before signing that next lease. And the idea really stuck. And I'll let Felix kind of pick up on, like, you know, how it evolved and why he connected with it so well.
Yeah, so this is Felix here. So when Ofo told me about the concept, it really stuck right away because of the issue I was having with my own landlord. My roommate and I, we made renovations to the property during our senior year. And next thing you know, the landlord comes by and says, well, I'm going to increase the rent based on the work that we put in. And we made flower beds, painted, all that kind of stuff. It used to be like a frat house, you know, and we made it, you know, livable. Because we were actually working and things like that. So when he told me about the idea, I instantly said, yeah, this is definitely a problem that I think we need to tackle. Just for me, my inspiration, just even now working on this project, it really just comes down to empowering renters. And, you know, I know that almost sounds like a buzzword, but if you really think about the different content, if you really think about all the different content that's out there that's faced towards renters, it really seems like it's faced towards older renters or towards issues that our generation doesn't really have. And the issues that our generation does have, you can't really go online and find any resource that specifically speaks to you, especially in your voice. So just with our content, everything is done in our voice, and it's done specifically for people like us that face the issues that we have all faced. So the videos, the blogs, all that kind of stuff, even our photos, it kind of generates that same kind of feel. So that's kind of something that's important for us to kind of keeping this project moving forward.
So I understand like what led to you starting this. Now that it's kind of grown, what is the driving force now? Is it still kind of like is it like still personal, like a personal thing where you just feel like you need to address this cause? Is it just like thinking about the consumers who go through this experience on a daily basis? Is it the financial gain that you see is like the potential for it? Like, what's the driving force now?
Yeah, no, I think if it was a financial gain, like, we would have tapped out a long time ago. Like, it's just not, it's not easy.
AKA we have offers on the table.
And so, like, what becomes very interesting is, like, it's one thing to conceptualize something. It's another thing to create it, put it in the world, and then people respond to it almost exactly like you thought they would. And I think that when I had just happened to read something where it was like, if you're a startup and you're getting threatened to be sued, you're on the right path. And like, and that happened like a month into us running, some landlord like came and threatened me at my office at Temple. It was this really crazy story. Had to get the police involved and everything. And so I was like, I think we're doing something right here. Yeah. And just hearing stories over the years of like people, like, whether it's, you know, I remember one building in Philly, after reviews were posted of the building online, and a tenant mentioned the reviews on the site to the management company. The next day they were ordering new gym equipment. They were sweeping all the floors. Yeah. Like, you know, so it really has an impact. And I think when you first hear those few stories, like, we had some landlords reach out to us from Florida, and they were like, hey, we actually didn't know our property management sucked. Like, we checked the reviews online, and their management company is really bad. We've now fired them, and we're bringing in new management to work with our tenants. Don't know what that means, but I just want to let you guys know that that's happening. When you start getting emails and messages like that, it's like, okay, like, this is really helping people. This is really doing exactly what we planned. And even deeper, we didn't even think about that angle, right? The landlord down to the property management angle. So that's what, like Felix just mentioned, that's what becomes a driving force. Is like, once you can actually empower people, once you can actually inform them, once they can actually connect with you and they vibe with the vibes of your company and what you're looking to do from a social standpoint, it's like that's a feeling that you can't really replace.
Yeah. Felix, did you go to Temple as well?
Oh no, I actually went to George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. Okay, got it. So how has the university scene, how has that helped? Because obviously a lot of these younger renters that you're probably targeting are from that demo, like the college students that are, you know, looking to either college students or young professionals, right, that you're trying to pursue. So
while you were at Temple, if you could speak to maybe, what at the college level will help, whether it's resources from professors, whether it's any I think you received a grant from school, and just things of that nature. Because I know a lot of startups birth on college campuses where folks are just in a confined space, have plenty of time, are around other talented folks, have access to capital through school grants sometimes, and then you're just in a creative space, right. So can you just speak towards that if it's applicable?
I'll let you can pick it up first, and just like how, because you've been working with the college directly on this.
Yeah. So just I guess post college, what we've been doing really when it comes to universities, really just dispersing our brand ambassadors. The whole focus there is you find the 10 or 20 apartment buildings that most students rent from, and you get the brand ambassadors to collect reviews from each one of those buildings. Once you do that, you kind of have a clearer picture of the rental landscape around each university. With that, you can do lots of things. You can take that information and chop it up into infographics and give it back to campus safety. You can give it back to the social media department, and then it's also just there on the website as well. So it helps out with SEO. Exactly. So for example, at Temple University, we have more reviews for all the different apartment buildings around that university than Google and Yelp combined.
Wow.
So now when someone searches for an apartment around Temple University, they'll find us.
Got it.
So when we go exactly. So that's how we engage with each university. It's the same process. Go to each university, you locate the apartment buildings that the students are renting from, get reviews from those buildings, and just like that, you're valuable to all of their students, their faculty, everybody, because that information is valuable to their parents. It's valuable to the staff in general, and especially to campus safety. For example, just right now, I'm in an email exchange with the International Student Department at Temple University. They said that a couple of their students have been facing issues when it comes to renting apartments because they're international students. They haven't really done it before, so they're asking, do we have any resources that can really support them? So as of right now, we actually have a few general resources here and there, but we don't have anything specific. But just because she brought that up, I thought that's a great idea. Not only does Temple University have international students, but every university nationwide, for the most part, has international students. So if we create a resource that's good enough for them, we can now take that same resource and deliver it to universities all over the nation. And just like that, now you're servicing their international students and the students itself. The International Student Department wants to put our information in the packets, the resource packets, things like that. So it's really just finding out what the problems are. So I didn't get a chance to describe like who I am, but for me, I like to think of myself as a creative problem solver and a creator. So when it comes to just businesses in general, every single business, the root of every business is a problem. So if you can identify what the issues are with that problem, that's how you go about creating a business from there. You determine who has this issue, how much would somebody pay to solve this issue, where is this issue even rooted, things like that. And that's how you really go about creating a business just from thinking about the problem. So when we started there, just thinking about the problems that different type of students have or different student segments, that's really how we really engage with the university, starting there. And then Ofo, he was a junior at the time starting the company, so he had another 4 years to really be a part of the university and really tell every one of his exactly.
I'm sure you heard a lot of stuff firsthand, and
so
was able to kind of take those frustrations real time and create solutions from real time. So I think that's cool and valuable. So I don't know if you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, I know you had mentioned too, like, kind of what were early nuggets that were helpful from the college perspective. For us, as Felix mentioned, we were still like in school when the whole ideation of this was happening. And so what many folks don't know, so the grant you're referring to is called the Be Your Own Boss Bowl that Temple does. I think the grant prize is $100K, but they've changed it up now where they divvy the entire thing up.
Okay.
But
at the one person when you applied.
Yeah, so when we applied, what happened was people think that's what's so funny is because there was so much buzz. I think people thought that like, oh, you apply, you're gonna win. Okay. They don't realize how hard, like that process was so crazy for the Be Your Own Boss Bowl. And we actually applied. That was our third time applying. The first time we applied for Untapped, They were like, it didn't even get to like the next stage. Second time we applied with the idea for Who's Your Landlord, we hadn't really built anything yet. They're like, didn't get to the next stage. Third time around, it was like we were already in New York for like a year, and we were already meeting with investors, and we were already looking. We were already making real business plans, like, you know, because we were trying to win. So by the time we had created our business plan and everything for the Be Your Own Boss Bowl, I remember our mentor looking at it and pulling us aside and being like, yo, in all the years of me judging this, I've never seen a business plan this good. Yeah. And the thing is, just to get further context, the first year we applied with Untapped, it took us 3.5 months to put together the packet to submit. The second year when we worked on for Who's Your Landlord, the idea, it took us 4 days. The third year we won $20,000. It took us 9 hours to create that whole plan and submit it. So the learning curve is like, once you start picking up information, it's a wrap. So for us, by the time we were pitching in front of the whole group, we were gonna win something, you know. So but it does highlight the fact that, you know, you got to put in the work in order to get to that standpoint of where it seems like it's so easy, but in reality, we all know it wasn't. You know,
almost the idea of an overnight. What do they call it?
Takes 10 years, overnight success.
Yeah. I'm tired.
No such thing.
I got here 8 o'clock. I've been working all day.
You good, man? You good?
All right, so I mean, I want to kind of just kind of better understand the business model. So I don't like talking about monetization because I feel like this concept is just so much deeper than just, you know, checks and everything. But how is a company making money? Is it almost like you pay the renters or the landlords and property management companies, as you mentioned before, to, you know, post different resources online for folks to potentially, you know, consider them? Like, what is that process like?
Yeah, so there's a few ways we monetize currently. The one primary way, though, has been through partnerships.
Okay.
So we've done three real big partnerships with Allstate, for example, because they're big on renters insurance. They want to get in front of the millennial audience, especially a captive one that's renting. Like, you know exactly what they're doing.
Exactly.
And then we work with companies like Roadway Moving. We just inked a partnership that we can announce now because it's done with American Express.
Awesome.
So we're and they, you know, how do you build your credit to at some point own a home, or at some point to not necessarily need a cosigner, right? So we're always working on providing. What's great is we work with partners who, at the end of the day, we can now, through our voice, through our message, through our curation, we can create content that speaks to the issues our actual renters are facing. So Felix just talked about international students and issues that they're facing, and he's absolutely right. I mean, once these problems hit our radar, we're able to have our content team put together amazing stuff to help actually solve those problems for those people, or at least provide insight into ways they can begin to solve those problems. So that's the core way currently. We partnered up with TransUnion, one of the 3 credit bureaus, recently, and they do credit reporting, background checks, and eviction history for our renters should they opt to do it. So that's split revenue there. And then lastly, which is something we haven't plugged in yet, but we certainly will in the future, as we grow deeper, like in these cities, the Phillies, Brooklyn, New York, overall, DC, and beyond, we will charge landlords to post their listings there. You know what I mean? Because we know we have a quality base of users that are connecting with us. And anytime you have massive traffic going to these areas, you want to capitalize off of that. And so at the end of the day, it's a much cheaper alternative for a landlord who's going to pay a lot of money to kind of broadly market around New York City. Off just the merits of can you be witty enough in your verbiage to win somebody over versus like, yo, if Idea tells me like this spot was really good and Namdi says the same thing, I'm probably rocking with it. You know what I mean? Like you can't pay for that. So that's what we're thinking about.
I think it's so interesting just because like it reminds me of that platform like Rate Your Professor.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
I was waiting for it. I mean, we joke about it all the time. I mean, but when you think about it, like think about Yelp and how we utilize it, right? Like we won't go to a bad cafe if they have bad reviews. Mm-hmm. We won't go to a bad restaurant if they have bad reviews. Even on Netflix, before you're chilling for like a couple hours watching a film, you'll read the little synopsis. You'll look at the stars, like what are people saying about it, and you know, or you'll Google it, right? Like, and so why don't we take that kind of seriousness and approach when it comes to housing, somewhere you're going to live in probably 6 months to a year to 2 years or more. And so it's really kind of, and I think a lot of that comes from the apathy of feeling like, first of all, everybody has to live in somewhere, you know what I mean? Even if you're homeless, you live somewhere, you call your domain. So I think, a feelings because real estate is such a dominating industry. It's like, well, you kind of get served, but you get served. Yeah. But in reality, it's like you do have agency of choice. You are the one making the money. You are the one cutting the checks, first of the month. So knowing all that and understanding you're going to drop security deposit, first and last month's rent, a broker's fee, why not do your research in advance so you're making at least an educated, informed decision before moving forward? Yeah.
No, for sure. I think folks are sometimes they're just so overwhelmed by the process.
Right.
Either that or just not informed. Maybe their folks or their friends have just followed that traditional path. Like, okay, listen, I know that this right here is a constant. I'm gonna deal with this wherever I sign my lease. So let me just go for price and just differentiate from location to location based on price. So I think it's cool that folks are offered this alternative to be able to make sure that their living experiences as best as possible. So man, this is awesome. I definitely want to talk about growing pains and also just areas of opportunity for your company. So just can you just touch base on that? How has the transition been? Or the assimilation process as you've been growing? You said 320,000 active users. That's amazing. So obviously with that comes scaling up, and with scaling up with any company, not just startups, obviously there can be some growing pains. So you can just touch on that, and then like how that's an area of opportunity for you guys moving forward.
Absolutely. So I guess the only real growing pains is just being able to just run consistently through the process of funding, kind of just having to change the focus from the founders to searching for funding versus working on the everyday process of trying to build a company. Kind of always makes you feel like you have to slow down or just divert your focus a little bit. Another thing is just having enough dev help. Developers are expensive. Really, really good ones are even more expensive. So if you have a company like ours who you start thinking about the different problems within rental communities that you'd like to solve, you start thinking about lots of different features that you'd like to create for your community of users. And the problem is you can only do one thing at a time, or so many things at a time, to the point where you're almost kind of getting a headache. Like, if we could just get this feature and that feature and that feature done in the next month or so, man, you just so many things that we could do.
Trying not to compromise quality.
Exactly. So, so it just feels like sometimes, one thing is a priority right now, but, that thing may not be a priority a week from now, a month from now, but you can't do anything about that because you only have but so many people working on that one core aspect of the business. And because the business is a website, that is the biggest area of need. So that's always just a growing pain, just having more fuel behind that area right there.
Yeah.
And I'll add, another growing pain is, because I've been thinking about this a lot. I think in our journey, one of the things that I think people don't understand how integral people are to everything. Like in the meetings I was having yesterday, one of the amazing concepts that came up, just was, and I've heard this before, and many of you have heard this before, but it's like people don't work for companies, they work for people. And we see it all the time, like a CEO will leave, and so will their chief of staff, and so will the assistant, and so will the other partners, right? Like, because it's just like, it's just different now. And so but it speaks to, like, I think in this process, you never quite perfect it, but you get so much better at reading people, and that can be like phony investors. Bro, I'm about to drop 200,000 on y'all crazy, and it's like you get in the beginning, you get hype like that stuff really means a lot, or folks that want to advise you, right, or want to be on your board, but in reality, they just want to put their arm around you because it looks sexy for them. Like, looks like they're in the know. They never really cut a check or make an introduction, but at least for them, they're winning socially because they're an older person, right? It's association, and if there's one thing I can just stress in the startup world is that we're jaded by, so and so exits for 100 million, so and so gets acquired for 50 million, but those are like the blips on the radar. Those don't happen all the time. Yeah. What's not told oftentimes what companies do exit for, and sometimes it's not what they're looking for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think from a standpoint of like understanding, people can be a hindrance as much as they can be a help. And so as much as you possibly can, it's highlighting, sure, we get to experience a lot of cool things because of this, but it's because of hard work. I think the hardest thing to do is maintain consistency. And I think we negate that as a society in terms of thinking about how hard it is to keep something going for any extended period of time. And we think that, things always hit quickly, 1 year, 2 years, boom. But, we joked about it earlier. It oftentimes takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And if anything, I think that the more we kind of expose, the reason why we're so authentic to our message and our experiences is because the more we can expose the real of it, the more people can be armed going into it. So they're not fumbling with the same mistakes we've made, or they're not, they can learn how to be even keel early and not get too emotionally tied into the process.
Sure. So you briefly mentioned help. So I guess this is a good segue into the main reason why I kind of wanted to chat with you guys about this campaign. So if you could just touch on it briefly, and just talk about what it is that you're looking for from these listeners to be able to provide that support. As you mentioned, it's tough, and to be able to raise that capital, and we acknowledge that, and we want to do our best to help provide any platform possible to help you two get the funding that you need to do what you need for your business. So just take it away.
Absolutely, man. So you can hear from both of how Felix and I talk. We always like to kind of educate as we talk.
For sure.
So to give it context, in 2015, in the spring, we're thankful to the Obama administration. They changed the Jobs Act to now allow for unaccredited investors to invest in companies. So what it used to mean to be what it does mean to be an accredited investor is you have to make at least $200,000 a year, and or you have to have assets worth $1 million or more. And now unaccredited investors, meaning anybody else, can invest in companies up to a certain percentage of your annual income. And what's awesome about that is, what we're doing is not a Kickstarter, it's not an Indiegogo, so it's not like you're not like donating, or kind of helping a cause. You're investing in a company. And so we have a campaign live right now at seedinvest.com/who's your landlord. That's WHOSE your landlord /seed, or just who's your landlord. And that's we are bringing on people who want to invest in something that's empowering their community, informing their community, and bettering their community. We've raised $250K out of $500K already. That 200 came from a group out of Maryland. 50 came out from a group out of Philadelphia. The remaining 250, we want our community to tap in and invest. I think we just passed the 5-digit mark, so I think we're at 10.5 right now. Went live about a week and a half ago. So we're excited. And so this is people's opportunity to invest. If this is your first time investing, I think it's a great opportunity, because a lot of times we think, we got to make $20,000 or we got to put a $50,000 investment in. But it's like, why not learn how to micro invest first? Put $500, put $1,000, put $2,000 or $3,000 in. Learn how to vet companies, learn how to vet entrepreneurs, learn how to read through documentation to make the right decisions. So that in the future, when you're investing bigger checks, you better know how to move your money. And so again, that's seedinvest.com. That's seedinvest.com/who's your landlord, WHOSE.
Cool. So I have I have a question. I'll say that for later. So what is your definition of success? With this company, is there an ultimate goal that you're looking for? And I guess it's a 2-part question. Has that definition of success changed from the inception to where you are now?
We'll both chime in on that. In terms of success, I like the last part you had. Has it changed from the beginning to now? So at the time of us starting this, certainly there's an aspect of this is really big. This can really solve a lot of problems. This can be worth a lot, if you do it right. And then as you build it and as you go through things, you start realizing the nuances in the M&A space, right? Mergers and acquisitions. I think you made a joke about it earlier. What if a realty company said, we'll drop some ducats on you, you just have to leave. There's many reasons a company would want to acquire you. What I think makes the most sense is, what do you want to get out of it at the end? And what we want to do is we want to build a company that's valuable, that serves the purpose and the needs that we've identified and know we can serve. And what we also are acutely aware of is that, like Felix mentioned, there's spaces where we have more data than Google and Yelp and all those companies, which is why Google indexes our information and provides it right there when you search. That's power. Information, access to it, and the use of it is power. And the more and more we scale up, the more and more power we gain, the more and more information we gain, the more and more users we have, that makes a company more valuable. I think a perfect end goal for us, like in a perfect world, you IPO, you become this massive corporation, you do all these amazing things. At the end of the day, though, even when you look to exit, if you look to exit in 2-3 years to a bigger company, you want to make sure that their reasons for acquiring you are aligned with what your purpose of building the business was. And there's been folks that have approached us about acquisition that we felt like it wasn't aligned, which is why we didn't end up going down that rabbit hole. But if you find a company that allows for your team to win, your investors to win, your families to win, that makes sense for the culture, makes sense for doing the next thing. Like, I talk about it all the time with my team. Like, I don't want them to be here for 20, 30 years. Like, the goal of this was to build something that really has an impact, but also sets us up where we can continue to put positive in the world the rest of our lives. And I'm already seeing it in terms of how we look at things differently, the different business opportunities we're starting to see now on the peripheral. Like, we're doing exactly what we set out to do. It's never as fast as you want it to be, but it happens when it's supposed to happen.
Timing is always right.
Yeah.
Cool. So just what our definition of success is now and what it was when we first started. I think it definitely has changed. I think in the beginning, even from the beginning, we felt this was a pretty big problem, and we could definitely, we weren't going to exit at least unless it was $1 billion. We laughed
big
about
ball
that.
of brain.
We were young, 22, 21, starting it. So we're like, no, we're not leaving unless $1 billion. So started off as that, and now thinking about that, just working on operations. That's what I do. I'm the COO. This company really has a really big opportunity to be just a machine. There are so many different rental communities that we are serving, and each rental community that we're serving, we can create features that really can almost seem like that rental community is its own company within our company. And we've got to the point now where, everything that we're doing, we try to make sure that we do it just so well and focus on doing it our way for our community that we can already see that applying that to the future of our company and the future features of the company and how we can solve those issues is going to be huge. We do content extremely well. We do content extremely well, and it's unique. Our founders are unique. The problem we're solving is unique. And just who actually has that issue is us. So it's kind of just really easy for us to determine what makes sense for us. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to go on too long, but I think just thinking about the rental communities and how other companies have become just like juggernauts in their space. They start off just as this one idea, and next thing you know, their idea is sitting on top of 3 or 4 more ideas because let's say they solve a problem and then they notice 3 or 4 smaller problems
that umbrella.
around that umbrella. So
yeah.
I think that's something that we're doing right now. We noticed that the reviews and just transparency around the housing space is an issue, but there's also opportunities when it comes to providing landlords with data around those reviews, providing universities with that data, international students. If you just think about all the different issues within the rental community, you can kind of come back to who's your landlord, and we can really solve those issues. All it is just starting off with the features at the ground level, at the phase 1, that doesn't completely make the entire website confusing. So if you kind of just introduce those features the right way, you can kind of look back 2-3 years from now and just say, wow, like this company is just a huge thing now, and it is a machine. So that's kind of how I see this thing really going, to the point where I don't think that I still don't think we'll sell unless it's $1 billion. But now at this point, I feel like the main goal is to definitely go to IPO and just create a company that it's kind of. I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way, but I really want to create.
Do it.
I mean, we talk about this all the time, but I just want to create a company that just scares a lot of people. When they look at it and say, "Wow, like this is a company that is up and down black and unapologetically black," but you can't stop them. And every one of their connections, everyone that they're working with has that same mission, and because they're all passionate about this, you just can't stop these young people. So saying, hey, let me toss you a few dollars to sell your company isn't going to work. Saying, hey, how about you co-found this other company with me so I can just pick your brain. Things like those little tactics that kind of split up teams just won't work, because I just feel like, we're just so tied to this mission of the company and just doing it unapologetically that I'm just thinking about this thing being a big machine that is just full of just very powerful, strong black minds that are just tackling rental issues for the underserved rental community just now and just moving forward.
Facts. Can't add no more to that.
Word, I'm about to start snapping my fingers.
You start laying it down for us.
Too much, Biko.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah, that's what's up.
I'm excited. I don't know if you had that the next question, but man, that's
Man, I want, what I do want to know is
empowering, man, for real.
Because you touched on a few points. Being jaded. And I mean, you guys been going through this for a while. So throughout your process, like, what's like the greatest lessons you learned, and greatest mistake you've had?
Greatest lesson learned, I think, is patience. Things just they don't happen as fast as you'd always want them to. But it's learning how to, like we talked about earlier, when we were just chopping it up downstairs before we came up. Like there's moments where when you're first broke, it's like that's like your eyes are big. Like, oh, how do we handle this? Like, I gotta call somebody to ask them to help me with rent. Like, that's crazy to me. And then it happens, and then you get through it, and then the next time you're like, all right, just call somebody and ask them to help me out. Like, it's not that deep. Or I'll scale back what I'm eating, or whatever the case is. And so, I think if there's one lesson in particular, it's and we see it all the time. We've seen a lot of our peers, companies come and go in the time since we started to where we are. And Jay-Z has a quote where he always talks about the genius thing we did was just we didn't give up. Because in the beginning, especially if you're a market leader, market creator, like there's nobody doing what we're doing, right? There's listings companies out there, but that's not what we are. You can find listings on our site, but we're empowering you, we're informing you, we're edutaining you, we're providing content, reviews. That's stuff that hasn't been done. No one's wanted to touch it because it's hard. But once you start compiling that data, that no one wants to send ambassadors to different apartment buildings and be running up and down like you're crazy. No one wants to take on the brunt of landlords suing or saying they're going to sue them because it's easy for them to do because they already have lawyers on retainer. Like, no one wants to take on that brunt, but we are. Like Felix just said, we're unapologetic about what we're doing. And so when you have that, when your vision's aligned and your core is aligned with the vision, then all of a sudden it makes it simpler to be patient because you're kind of just like, they don't even see us coming. They don't even see, and then boom, you hit them. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost like all the people that were faking or not paying attention, they're paying attention now. So there's that part. And you said, what's the biggest lesson we've learned? Or that was the biggest lesson.
Your greatest failure.
Greatest failure. There's things, we fumble things. I don't think there's been like a failure. Let me think. Greatest failure.
Just something that just makes you feel like, and we can never do that again. Man, like we really, really messed up on this one. We should have did this instead of this.
Yeah,
Jumping on that.
yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
I guess trusting our instinct. You know what I mean? When we kind of just both feel something, we were kind of on the same page about a decision, but just because it may be something that's completely new to us, because as young entrepreneurs, you're still always learning. So things like that, and then when that decision is made and you didn't trust your instinct, you didn't go with your instinct, and it ends up being the wrong decision. You're just like, we knew that, this is something that we should have done, and let's say it costs us this, it costs us that, whatever it is. But what I will say is every single time it's happened, we have learned from it. Let's say the first time, we didn't trust our instinct, that it hit us a little longer. It took us a little longer to identify that, we made a mistake. The second time, it was a little bit more of like, all right, we've got to really, really kind of, and the next time, I think it was a matter of like a week and a half where it was an issue. And after that, it was like, all right, look, we've got to trust our instinct, but the next time it's going to be like the first time it happened. We're just going to just go with it. But that, I think that's probably like the biggest thing there. That's kind kind of also a lesson as well. And then just going with what Ofo said with patience, timing is everything. Just knowing when you are actually ready to make a certain decision, knowing when you're ready to make a hire, knowing when you're ready to contact this person, this partner, or whatever, for certain conversations or certain people that you want to reach out to in your network. You can only reach out to them once, and that first impression for an app or a website, whatever it may be, is everything. So you just have to kind of just slow down for a second, just take a second and just leave the founder's room and ask other people that will be completely objective, and just get that feedback from them. Say, hey, if I were to do X, Y, and Z, do you think, we're ready for that now? Or would this be a good decision to make now? If they say, look, I really don't think you guys are there now, you got to know when to listen to that. And they say, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. You got to listen to those things, because you'll learn fast when that person doesn't respond to your email or something, and you're just like, damn, like, how am I gonna reach out to this person a week or a month later, or even when you actually realize, now is when we should be reaching out to this person, and you can't because you got to go back or whatever. So whatever it is, it's just timing is everything, patience, and then just knowing, just trusting your instinct, or just you're moving forward with that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to the timing thing, like I always say, half the battle is being there. Like, I think about the ACLU, that's been an organization for decades. But, when everything happened with the Muslim ban, early top of the year, and the whole thing happened at JFK, all of a sudden in one weekend they raised $20 million, and now they're a household name. Everyone's heard of the ACLU.
That's a good point.
And so it's just timing we don't want to wait 20-something years. like LinkedIn took a while too, right? Yeah. But like we want to move faster than that.
Just being prepared.
Being prepared. Like, so long as you create those core, like the core values of your business, the core, modes of methodology that you stand by and what you abide by, as internally and externally, then when the time hits, like, you're ready. You just always are.
I'm good, man.
So
I gotta go think about my life after this. Go ahead now. You can.
So what are you guys looking forward to in 2018?
Man, getting this bread first, man. And then once
cut the check.
Yeah, cut the check, man. Cut the check. But we have so much in store. Like, from a content perspective, we're excited. I mean, there's so many things we want to talk about, so many issues we want to highlight that we can help people with. From a review perspective, we know we're going to dig deep into New York, Philadelphia, and D.C., and that's only going to have reverberation effects amongst other cities. From a team perspective, we're going to grow. We'll keep adding people that are amazing people that want to see the same vision that we have for the company. And so 2018, I came to 2017 saying this is a year of prosperity. And honestly, like, it's panning out that way. Like, there's been so many just amazing points of this year that I can only look up and say, God, thank you. You know what I'm saying? So for 2018, it's like, I think that's the year. People always say it's the year I'm going to level up. Like we going to level up in 2018. Like, that's the plan. So you got to keep it going.
Yeah, there's so many lessons to take from this year. I think we really just found our identity this year. So I'm just really excited with funding to really just take that to the next level, with content, our videos, our brand ambassadors. Seems like everything that we really wanted to do, we really found how to do it really well, or just well enough where other people are telling us that we do it well, or they're willing to pay us for it. So there's definitely always room for improvement, but we're at a point now where we're ready to see those things kind of just taken to the next level, like you're saying, and just bringing that revenue in as well. Just 2018 is definitely going to be about revenue and expansion and just doing everything we do extremely well. So I'm looking forward to 2018. I've been just smiling every time that number comes up.
That's awesome.
That's what's up.
Yeah, thank you very much for the time, man. Thank you for the time. And for everyone listening, who'syourlandlord.com, correct? Yep. WHOSE.
For the site, either way works, actually.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
so WYL Landlord too, or
WYL Landlord.
Oh, okay. You bought all the domain. Okay, gotcha.
Smart.
Smart. And then on social media, WYL Landlord. Follow them on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook. You have everything, right?
Yep.
All right, cool.
Wait, hold on. Last thing. Why is it WHOSE?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. So yeah, I mean, the reason is
I didn't even know.
We use the possessive form of the word who because we're giving renters ownership of their living situation by putting housing in their hands. Anytime you own anything, you're in a possession of it, and so that was the impetus for our name. And now it even helps out that we have all the domains to it. So now it doesn't matter what you put in there, you'll come to our site. So it's good stuff.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
No doubt. And my phone again, seedinvest.com/who's your landlord.
Here we go. Cut the check.
Cut the check.